King.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you mentioned demo, geotechnical, civil site, architectural plans, and all of those are in process right now. Is that correct?
Well, we still have to get, we approved the demo last month, so that's set up to start after football season. I need to check and see if we pulled a PO for the geotech and the surveying.
Okay.
Sometimes, like, some of that can't be done until the demo's done.
Right.
What's that?
And the funding.
Yeah, and the funding.
Moving in a capital project, that is a comprehensive part of building that building, and so usually those would be capitalized.
Can you put your microphone in?
Those would be capitalized as part of that, and so we don't have the funding in place necessarily to go forward and proceed with that without having the funding to proceed.
And we are now, we used a significant amount of our maintenance funds. Part of that $15.8 million request was to replenish the maintenance funds that we pulled out to cover the bleachers. So we're running negative in some of our maintenance lines because we expended those funds.
Yeah, and the demo.
And the demo, yeah.
Okay, so and you did get some, you said earlier, you said you did get some estimates from the architect.
Just like not formal, just like this is what eyeball, like, using that kind of $450 idea.
So plans are going forward in spite of the hiccup with the education committee.
I mean, as best we can, but we're going to hit a wall pretty soon where we can't go forward because at some point we have to pay a company to do the geotech. We have to pay a company to do the survey.
Yeah.
We have to, because at a certain point, like, we can't put a bid out. This is, we think it's this, or we got an idea of this. It's got to be, they're going to want to look and see that report.
Okay, so has the geotech given us an estimate on what that's gonna cost?
I think we've got, I need to see, because sometimes the geotech and the civil comes together.
Okay.
That's in the process of getting that quote.
Okay.
So probably by the 24th, we'll have an idea of what that is.
Okay, that's good.
And if we get that sooner, I'll share it. But
yeah.
I feel confident by the 24th we'll have that quote.
Okay. And because we definitely don't want to delay. If there's, well, I'll come back to that. So, in terms of moving money around in the temporary, some of those things that we were looking at on capital projects are they when are those slated for? Like, when would they come before the board? I mean, is there any, like, are we talking at our next meeting or November, December? Like what?
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine, I know the HVAC is a pretty immediate need to get that stuff repaired.
Yeah.
But what's the schedule on some of that?
It'll be different on each project, but most of those will come to you on the 24th. Like, for instance, the Portland High School roof, the HVAC units, the lighting for Station Camp and Rucker Stewart. Now, not all of those, like, obviously, like, we'll have to change lights out during student breaks and things like that. But, some of the, like, for instance, the Station Camp gym floor will come later because we got to get through. But we'll want to do that, like, whenever the last ball's dribbled on the court for basketball season. We'll want to get started because it's not an immediate process to replace a gym floor.
Okay, so for the geotech, civil site, and architectural, could we move some funding around in our general purpose to cover that immediate need and then reimburse it later if we need to? Is that a possibility?
I mean, we could. It's not a best practice, and I don't really know. Hang on for me. I got it. It's not a best practice. It doesn't really buy us very much time because, if the thing is that if what you're asking me is if the commission is not going to approve this until they see bids, then we're never going to get this done. Because we can't move far enough down the road to get that. Because what we're really asking is an accounting move so that we know what our budget is. Like, if we move $15 million, then we know we've got $15 million to spend. So when we got bids back, the way that we will issue the bids is we will line item, like, you can do, like, you don't just say football stadium at Beach High School. You say bleachers at Beach High School, some of the other things. You can do alternates in there. We do that every time we do a big construction project bid, so that we can look at, like, obviously some things, for instance, if we have some things at another school that aren't the same priority as Beach, Hendersonville, Portland, White House, we might slide those back and not do those and rebid those later. But the $15 million gives us a budget to know what we can work with, so that we can understand what we're bidding, so that we get good bids, so that when that comes back, we're getting the most effective response for taxpayers.
Okay, so we've spent about 16% of our capital, and we got all this other stuff coming down the pipe. Where does the best practice notion come from? Because if we have a need, I mean, we have the money for it.
A best accounting practice?
I mean,
Is that
just
what you
to, I mean, if we say best practices, I mean, there's.
So,
Let me answer that, Amanda.
Okay.
I think what you're asking is like, I just don't see best practice or not. Like, I think Ms. Brown can speak to the accounting practice. I don't think that you gain anything by just slowing down capital projects that are very necessary, or other expenditures that are very necessary to cover something, just because we can't get approval to use money that's already in our reserves. So, I mean, Ms. Brown, you can answer about the accounting part. You understand that better than I do.
so if I understand you correctly, you're saying, for example, so there's a lot of money that we don't have access to move, unless I move it out of salaries. And so what that would look like is at a certain point in time, we would not be able to pay our employees if that money was not replenished. That would be bad practice. So the thing with utilities, I may have enough money right now in my utilities line that I could move that over to start some of these projects. But at some point in time, I would not have the funding to actually pay our utilities. So when I say that's bad practice, it's bad practice to borrow from one fund that you know you need it in to cover another fund in that interim.
Well, I'm not talking about. I'm saying within our capital outlay. I'm talking about. I'm not talking about moving money from
I got you.
one salary to the other. I'm just saying, can we sort of shift things around? Like, for example, that list of all those capital projects. What? And this is just an idea. What if you presented that to the education committee and said, hey, I've got a list here of everything. Here's what all of our capital projects. We could fund that with reserves and leave the capital for our immediate emergency needs right now for bleachers and phase one projects.
I think that there's a couple issues there. One is that the purpose of the school board is to approve those projects, not the education committee on the county commission. I think you're setting a dangerous precedent then, that basically we're giving the responsibility of the school board to manage the school district that I'm hired to do and that y'all are elected to do. I think that sets a very dangerous precedent for the county. But I think basically at some point you're borrowing the money to pay your electric bill to cover, car maintenance repair. I just don't see that you get enough leverage by doing that to gain, maybe you gain 2-3 weeks, but you're still going to have to go through all those other steps. And then, the issue of needing to move the $15 million in addition to setting a budget is the fact that otherwise when you get done and we've got everything ready to go to bid, we have to run an entire school board county commission cycle to get the money moved. So you could extend we've got a bid that might be valid for 30 days, and we're going to be tight pressed to get school board approval and then go through the county commission. To me, this is just me personally, it smacks of getting mired down in a bureaucratic procedure and slowing down work that's vitally necessary to get our stadiums up to speed for next football season.
Okay, so how can we, the education committee, they even said, hey, we want to fund this stuff. We just need to have more specific things. It's not, and that, to me, from what I understand, that's the simplicity of it. How can we work with them? In other words, they kicked it back to us, right? They tabled it. I mean, if they had voted on it, it would have been done, right? So they tabled it, said, hey, bring it back to the school board. We want a little more information. How can we provide that to them, and to avoid a delay on this? And so what are some ways we can work with them?
Yeah,
If we're not gonna move around our capital outlay that we currently,
Yeah.
I mean, how can we provide them what they're asking?
I just think those projects, I think those projects are vitally important for our school system too, in addition to stadium projects. We have the opportunity. We are not asking, I think there's a little bit of.
Well, I'm not saying we
Right.
not do them. I'm saying
Right.
we've got, okay, it's like we're talking about our personal finances as an example. I've got money in savings. I've got money in my checking. Well, I was going to use this checking account, this money for X, Y, Z. This emergency happened. I'm going to spend it on this now, and then I'm going to reimburse with my savings. Okay, so I'm not saying we're not asking for it's not that it's not that we're canceling projects. I'm just saying we're moving things around, and that's fine if we don't want to spend any of our current outlay. But I'm just saying, what can we do to give them the confidence they need to approve it?
Yeah,
Because I understand where they're coming from. We're just, hey, you want 15 million. The schools, we voted on this, 15 million. And to say, well, it's for bleachers, it's for stadiums, it's for phase one, but without giving them any kind of estimates or, so how can we do that? How can we provide them some details?
Well, I think part of the issue with that analogy is that basically we're not asking for new dollars.
No, I know that.
Hang on.
Yeah.
We're not asking for new money. We're asking to move money out of our savings, the school board savings, to address an emergency need. The stadium projects are a textbook definition of an emergency need. Every penny that we spend on those projects will be voted on by the school board that's constitutionally elected to make those decisions. We will follow every comptroller, state, local purchasing guideline to bid those projects, to do the best we can to save money for the taxpayers. But the school board is elected to make those decisions for the school system. I think, an analogy is it's like you've got money in your savings account and the banker won't let you have access to the funds. And, that's the question that we got to ask is what does it take to, the simplest analogy for a home is like, I would change banks, but we can't change banks.
I understand.
Sure. I would hope, like I've said from the start, like I hope to be able to work with the county commission to be able to answer their questions. I'm happy to go back. Like I say, I plan to ask if we can meet again, and I'll go back over and meet with them. But at a certain point, I think that the next step is for constituents to share their opinion with their, we live in a democracy. At a certain point, voters have to share their opinion with their elected officials. And
and you got to understand it's also constitutionally the model of checks and balances. So
sure,
they're another layer. And of course, I understand your analogy. The bank's not giving the money, but it's kind of not the same. And this is government. This is taxpayer money. They have constitutionally they are checks and balances over that as well. So they want to approve this. I talked to them. They want to do this. There's nothing malicious going on, as has been shared.
Yeah.
Well, social media, like you had said earlier.
Yeah.
So, they want to do this.
It's simple. Then you vote on it. It's really simple.
They're asking for specific things.
Sure. And I'm happy to give them everything that I know. I'm happy to share the process. But if their expectation is that I can say that, this stadium project at Gallatin High School or Beach High School or Hendersonville High School or Portland will cost $3.1 million or $3.097 million, we would not be good financial stewards of the money if we were doing that, because we would be giving an estimate with no basis on factor reality.
Okay, so can we fund the geotech, the civil site, and the architect with what we currently have? Because that's not, to me, that's a smaller expense than, 15 millions, actually, I mean, we're not going to go in with actual costs, right? So can we fund those items just to get it going?
I don't think any contractor that has the size to do the projects that we're talking about is going to take the time to bid a job if the funding is not lined up.
I'm talking about, so is the geotech and the civil side, is that coming from the contractors that are providing the bids?
No, those are separate companies.
So they're not going to be building it, the companies that do the
No.
geotech, the civil site? Okay,
No,
so
they will give
that's a separate,
right, and they will give
Thing.
but what I'm saying is like, just doing the geotech and the other stuff is not going to give the specificity. The only thing
I see what you're saying.
the only thing that gives the specificity that the Education Commission asked for is to go through the bid or purchasing process. And where I feel stuck is that I can't get that if I don't have a budget in place and we don't have, we've got to be able to convey this is how much we're going to spend, because what we're really not talking about is the money as much as we are the accounting procedure to move the money into the proper line so that then we can do the due diligence. Like I shared with them, I will be happy to bring over everything and share with them. But the problem is if we do the geotech and then we do the site survey and we do the architectural plans, yes, we can probably figure out a way to do all that. But the problem is we will still have to bid, and no contractor is going to bid that if your funding source isn't lined up, because they could do 100 projects right now, and they're not going to tie up their time and effort in a project, because they deal with people all the time that say we're going to do this and they don't have the money to do it.
so when you say we need the funding source, we have the funding source, it's there. It's
We
there.
We don't have a money problem, we've got an accounting maneuver problem, a bureaucratic problem.
Is there not some creative way, special call meeting, some way to fast track that? Because I know we're talking about getting bogged down in the bureaucratic. It's got to go through the
we're there.
committee, got to go through the budget, then the final commission. So is there a way to move that along? So we get the geotech, we get the civil side, we get the architectural plans. And I was looking at some of the architectural plans and that were and agenda items that was on our school board meeting for the White House Intermediate. And the architect, and I think I have it in here somewhere, but the architect had presented it, and here's the cost. It wasn't a bid; it was just here is the estimated cost. And that looked like something. Would an architect be, if similar plans, would they present a similar report that could go forward and get fast tracked? Here's a ballpark about an architect's going to give a pretty close, rendering of actual cost. Maybe, I would think a pretty close estimate. So, once we get the architectural estimate, could we fast track that in some way? At least getting the funding, because so there's really nothing holding it up, moving along and getting those items, getting those accomplished. And once we get them accomplished, we move forward with working out this funding maneuver.
We don't have necessarily the capacity to be able to pay for all those things unless we move a lot of stuff around. I think we're looking at...
Or hold off on LED lights or something. I remember LED lights, 615,000. What are we talking about for architects, geotech, civil site? Is it going to be...
Architects 3% of the overall project.
Okay. Well, how are they going to know what that is until we...
They'll give you a flat rate and then they'll add to it based on...
So they're going to figure out the cost and then...
They're going to charge you a set rate to get started and they're going to add to it if you go above that. Like, that's why it's important to set the $15 million. If you set $15 million, they're going to do 3% of $15 million. We're tying ourselves up in a knot over a very simple problem, and I don't know the impasse that we are at is that, because I think where I disagree with you a little bit, Mr. King, and I understand what you're saying. And yes, it is possible if we move a lot of things. And I think y'all could certainly, as a board, decide to do that if the majority of the board chooses to do that. But I think the problem is like, I still don't think you get to the specificity of what was requested of me at the education committee without doing bids.
So I talked to a few of them. It's not that they want total cost. They would like to have some estimate of some kind of just some kind of estimate. You know,
Yeah, it's
I think
15
once you-
million. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I mean,
The point where you said before 15 million is nowhere near enough to do what you'd like.
on phase
So-
one, Mr. Lacy. But you have to have a budget. You have to have a budget to get started. That's all. I mean, what we are doing with $15 million is setting our budget for the phase one project. We will have the option. The job of our task is to take that $15 million and spend it as wisely as possible to cover our bleacher needs and our other athletic facility needs at the affected stadiums and across the county. And we've got the ability to do it. I will do anything in my power to meet with the education committee, meet with the budget committee, meet with the full commission. I'm happy to do whatever they would ask of me, but I can't give a line item cost of what everything costs. But I mean, but the cost is 15. I mean, we'll spend every penny of $15 million on this. And you're right, Mr. Lacy, we won't get everything done, but we'll get really far down the line. And the job, and I think, what's robbed from the school board is the ability to sit here and have the rich conversation and then make a vote on how we allocate these funds to best meet the needs of all of our schools. Because we represent all the schools in Sumner County at this table, and I think that is the democratic process that's being undermined in this, because we're not, if we allow the education committee of the county commission to determine how that money is spent, one, you hit the reverse check and balance problem, which is the school board is elected to make school decisions. Yes, they have a check on moving money that was not budgeted into the proper line, but we have the responsibility, or y'all have the responsibility, to determine how that money is spent. And you'll vote on every penny of that $15 million and how it's spent.
So I'm just saying, you're saying it's going to 15 million. Well, you're making an estimate, and I'm just trying to find out.
Yeah. I'm not making an estimate. That's how much we can pull out of reserves. Like, that's a hard 15 million
Okay.
that we'd have to cut other things if we want to go above that 15 million.
Do you have any information about how do you know that? I feel like there's some assumptions going on here. I mean, where you get, I don't know, I'm trying to really, why not 10 million, or, I mean, I voted for 15 million. I mean, I voted for it.
That's what we can
I
say.
agree with you. I'm just trying to figure out how we can make this happen. Okay.
I join you in wanting to do the same thing. I really do. I've spent a lot of time over the last 2 weeks trying to work through the same solution. And the thing that we keep coming up against is that the school board is responsible for determining how that money is allocated. We could easily spend $35, $40 million on athletic projects, but we don't have $35 or $40 million. We have 15. We have some very specific needs. Facilities at Beach High School, facilities at, partial facilities at Hendersonville High School, Portland High School, some at White House. Then we stretch out, and what else can we do with that money? And some of it is we're also doing this with the volatility of a construction market that changes constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I understand all that. I find it hard to believe that we can't provide them something of, some kind of estimate.
I can give a ballpark cost of each project. But
that would be a start. That would be a good place to start, because I watched the video of the meeting, and there really wasn't anything like that, right? You were very vague. And so I think that was something, if you had a ballpark idea, you know, and I'm trying to figure out, like, you're saying it's going to cost more than 15 million. You obviously know, you obviously have some information to make an educated guess.
No, I mean,
So
I
I'm
would
trying
just
to figure out where your sources are. I mean, you're making an educated guess that 15 million is a good place to start, but how did you arrive there?
Well, I
You
mean,
and
I
I
know
agree with you. I mean, you know, so
I know if you build 4 completely brand new on-campus stadiums, that's way more than $15 million.
Okay, unpack that. I mean, how
If
based
you
on
look
what?
at what's constructed in other places.
Okay.
You know, but at the same time, Mr. King, it's like we live in an age of gotcha politics, right? I mean, I live it every day, right? Anything that I say to that education committee, anything I say here, if it comes up and it's a different price, it's going to be like, well, you misled us. You said it was going to be this, and it's not that. It's this. I would prefer to deal in, when we're dealing with taxpayer dollars, I think we owe taxpayers the specifics. And what we are asking for is not the approval for $15 million of projects. We're asking to move $15 million out of our reserves into our capital line and $780,000 back to replenish our maintenance lines, which we have very specific prices because we've already expended those, right? So the $15 million is what we're talking about for the stadium projects. We have to go back through the process, and I don't know how much of that we'll be able to do until we get the hard bids. I mean, roughly, I would say you're probably, because, you know, you're also looking at like the needs at Beach High School are different than say Portland High School.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's where I think it's hard to, you know, you're probably looking at a minimum of $1.5 million on any of these projects, and you're probably looking at an upward element of about $3.5, $4 million, depending on
Right.
but I mean, but that's not, I'm not super confident about those numbers. I know, like, I think we can get probably 85-90% of the things on that list for phase 1 probably done for 15 million, but that's variable based on construction costs, based on what we find. You know, if we dig down and we got to bring in a bunch of dirt and a bunch of rock and then compress it, and, you know, there is no telling what we're going to find underneath some of these old stadiums.
Sure. So, and I want to talk about that in a second, but okay. Here's what I would like. Here's just what I would like to see happen. I would like to see these first steps. I would like to see them followed through. Geotech, civil site, architect, and we figure out a way to do that as a board with what we can, you know. And I don't think we're going to have to move too much around. I mean, that's just my opinion. You know, and I'm talking about within capital outlay, because so far we've spent 16% of that. And so I feel like we can get creative and move a few things, hold off on a few things, maybe not HVAC, but things like LED lights, some of the other things that were on that list. Get those steps taken care of. I think we can do that. So I would like to see that on the agenda at our meeting and this month. Just if we can, you know, like you said, you'll have something by the 24th. Is that right?
For capital projects, yes.
For those items?
I hope so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation. Secondly, I am concerned, and you know, we've thrown around the term emergency, and we've talked about a tight timeline. I am concerned that if we, like Alan was saying, you know, we could end up without some football fields next year with, if there's something wrong, we find something wrong, like let's say they're doing the, you know, some of these things, the geotech survey, and well,
We're without those facilities now, and I think
Yeah.
you're looking at, like, even I think we have the best possible fix at Beach High School right now. I don't know that we could do much better in terms of staged bleachers, but students can't jump and be students. They have to be careful because these bleachers are not made to withstand, you know, the spirit section
Sure.
at Beach High School jumping up and down, or Hendersonville High School, or the others. And it's awkward. It's not, there's some problems with it. It's a great short-term Band-Aid, but, you know, I think the part that's being missed is we don't have those facilities now.
Yeah, I'm concerned that if we rush this stuff, there's going to be, I mean, are we moving too fast? I mean, is it possible that, you know, we want to do it right,
Sure.
but we don't want to rush something and just throw something up.
And that's why
And
we
so,
need
I
is,
mean, can we, I'm just after some of the presentation and and I'll have to go back and look at it.
Sure.
But I do question, can we really pull this off, even if we got the funding
yeah.
you know, or should we really look at doing it right, and you know,
If we have to stage temporary bleachers at all those facilities next year, you know, if you look at what we spent this year,
I understand.
yeah, I mean, to me, it's not a good use of $1 million, $1.5 million that we could put into,
No,
that
it's
would
not.
basically replace one of the stadiums, or, you know, at least one side, or, you know, like you could probably fix Portland Stadium for what it would cost to stage the bleachers for 1 year.
Well, I'll just close by just saying I would like to see those initial steps. Maybe we can figure out a way to at least do those, and in the meantime, you know, work on figuring out a way to overcome that, or just overcome that funding maneuver.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I haven't lost faith in that. It sounds like you have a little bit. I don't know.
No, I haven't lost faith. I'm just a realist,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I mean, I am happy. I'll go talk to anybody about the
Yeah.
project, and I'll give every bit of information I can. But I'm realistic too.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm a realist too. I think we can make it happen somehow. But,
I hope so.
yeah. Okay.
We're hopeful. Thank you, Mr. King.